Hello, I'm Leanne Shea, Aviation Week Network's Executive Editor for Business Aviation and MRO. Welcome to another Aviation Week Executive Quicktake. Today we are talking with James Prater, who is the Vice President of Customer Support, Business Aviation for Rolls-Royce. James, thank you for joining us today. Let's jump into what we're here to discuss today. James, what is EHM, EVHMU, and what is the value for customers?
Good job getting through the alphabet acronyms there, Leanne. EHM is Engine Health Monitoring, which I think most people in business aviation are familiar with some sort of engine health monitoring. That's engine data downloads that come from the engines after the flight is over, and then folks can analyze that data about what's happening with the engines in a past term sense. Now, EVHMU is our engine vibration health monitoring unit. That's the next generation. And you notice it adds in vibration there. There's so many other things besides vibration that get added as well. But it's the next generation where it's more of a real-time look or a constant look, I'll say, at that same engine health data that we got from EHM. But it's much more data, and we can talk more about that as we go. So it's really important that those engines continue to operate and stay healthy. And the question that lingers in folks' minds is, how healthy are my engines? And so by gathering this data and analyzing this data, we can help provide what we like to call intelligent insights into how your engines are operating and what we can do to maximize your uptime, your time on wing, and the performance of your engines over the life of the product.
Sounds good. Well, how does EHM and EVHMU work? And how does Rolls-Royce process all that engine data? I mean, because it has to be a ton of data.
Correct. So each engine has its own engine computer. Okay, that engine computer collates all this data from different parameters that are measured throughout the engine on various sensors. And then that is often communicated back to the airframe computer system and can then be uploaded to our desk. And then we have a bunch of algorithms that look at this data. Okay, so let's talk for a moment about transmission. So this doesn't happen while the aircraft is flying. This happens once the aircraft is on land. So weight on wheel switches are important here in order for the data to be able to transmit. Historically, that's been done over a Wi-Fi signal once you get near your hangar or a maintenance hangar that's outfitted appropriately. In the modern day, we can use a cellular signal, and that's much better because then anywhere in the world, whether you've connected with the Wi-Fi or not, your cellular signal can upload the data to us. So then that gets into our system, and that data then is analyzed by algorithms that we have set up to look at all the various parameters and what are the mission critical items and have there been any shifts in the parameters. Once the algorithms have done their work, then they will flag up any changes to an engineer, and the engineer then takes a individualistic and educated look and analysis of what's going on. Why did this shift? What could possibly be causing this? What do we need? What action do we need to take, or what activity needs to be done now in order to maintain the engine health? Does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you. But is it possible to detect an issue before there is a warning on the flight deck?
So that's exactly where Rolls-Royce is headed today. So historically, EHM has been only historical, right? So it was on that last flight, and actually it was what we called snapshot data. So there were 5 points in time during any flight where we took basically a snapshot, or the computer took a snapshot of what was happening with the engine at the vital stages of compression and turbine, et cetera. Now, today, we have continuous data. So the computer is reading the data continuously. Instead of only at 5 snapshots throughout the flight, we are getting data, multiple thousands of data points every second while that engine's in operation. Now, again, that does not transmit while the aircraft is in flight. Okay, I want to be very careful and cautious to help people understand there's no way for someone to hack into your engine computer while you're in flight. There's nothing to worry about there. This does rely upon the weight on wheel switches in order to transmit data to us. But once that data comes through, now we have looked at the entire flight, and we're looking at every second of that flight and what happened rather than just points in time. And the benefit is this: can it identify something before there's an indication? Absolutely, yes. And we've got a few historic examples already just over the last couple of years where parameters inside the engine have shifted. However, they're still within specification, or they're still within the tolerance that's acceptable for safe and continued flight. And so therefore, there was no warnings in the cockpit. The flight crew finished the flight successfully and happily and went home. When the data comes through, though, our analysis system then identified some trend shifts. And we, in one case that I can recall, we actually called up the customer, said, something shifted in your compressor. Something's not right. The pressure's changed in flight. Sure, it was safe, but we want to make sure you don't have a disruption in the future. And what we found was actually a problem inside the engine that required the engine to come off for repair. So here, the passengers and flight crew really had no idea what was going on. And everything was fine. The engine did what it was designed to do. It was robust enough to deal with this issue and not flag up an error or a problem. But we were able to identify through that EHM continuous data that there was a shift. And then we went for a borescope inspection. The borescope revealed the real issue, and then we had to take the engine off, and we were able to get them a lease engine and keep them flying without any disruption.
Those are really interesting examples. It makes me think, is Rolls-Royce using that engine data from EHM to better its services or change its services options for customers?
Absolutely. We're constantly learning. Our engineers continue to monitor the data and where we're picking up issues, or if we pick up an issue in the fleet that we didn't see data on, the engineers are analyzing, how could we see that sooner? What do we need to look at? What do we need to look for so that we could then see that coming in the future? So there's a constant progression of learning on that side. Meanwhile, keep in mind that we have over 8,000 business aviation engines in flight. That's business aviation only. That does not include the airlines. So over 4,000 aircraft out there. We are pulling in the data from almost every one of those engines. We would love to have every one of them, but not everybody is enrolled. So we are pulling in data from all across the fleet and from various fleets. And so we have tons of data coming in, and that, again, having more information always helps you get smarter, right? And so we continue to learn as we are looking at the entire fleet. We can compare the left engine to the right engine. We can compare the engines on Leanne's aircraft versus the engines on James's aircraft. And why are we seeing differences there? And that all helps our engineers to learn and to analyze better ways to improve the product in the future. So first and foremost, our focus is safety, right? The engines need to operate safely and keep everybody safe and get them to their destination. That's really important to us. Secondly is engine reliability. Reliability is critical to achieve that safety record. It's also Rolls-Royce's reputation, and we are very proud about our reputation and how reliable our product is. And the way we achieve some record-breaking reliability is through this data, this engine data. So, we're constantly using this to refine our product. And then we're also using it to refine our services. So when we learn about different modes of failures, we learn about different fault codes and different times that they happen, we set up services to support people around the world to reduce the impact of any potential disruption. So first of all, trying to minimize the disruptions. Secondly, how do we set up services that when a disruption happens, or if a disruption happens, we are there as soon as possible. And so our objective there is anytime that we have an AOG aircraft, our objective is to get that aircraft returned to service and flying safely within 24 hours, anywhere in the world.
James, those were really interesting examples. Thank you so much for walking us through those innovations. But that is all the time we have for today, so we've got to wrap. I've been talking with James Prater, who is Rolls-Royce's Vice President of Customer Support for business aviation. James, thank you so much for joining us for this Aviation Week executive interview.